Greetings and welcome to I Care Leadership Live. This is the podcast for I Care leaders who want to level up their leadership, create better cultures, and improve the financial results of their clinics. Now, let's join the show. My guest today is the irrepressible Kurt Defenbaugh. Kurt is the leader of Ally Retina, which is part of Ally GPO. Kurt, welcome to I Care
Thank you,
Leadership.
Mike. It's so good to see you, man.
You too. It's been a while.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being on the show.
Of
I don't know if you've listened to the show, and it's okay if you haven't, but
I have.
I Care Leadership Live is all about, it's for I Care leaders, right? The practice admins, the managers and stuff. And today we're going to talk about culture. And I think I'm so glad, but I don't know that we've really talked about that or heard from a practice administrator, a former practice administrator, such as yourself. So I think you're going to have so much to contribute on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And culture certainly applies to where I am today.
Okay.
With my own business and my own team. So it's never a topic that loses its importance, no matter what you do, where you go. So
okay, awesome. Well, I love that. Starting out, I'm gonna throw you a curveball. Didn't mention anything about this. I always like to ask a personal question. So, yeah, personal. I don't know. Aside from work, what is something that you're like is on your mind that you're really fascinated and fired up about? Like maybe it's a book or a show, or I don't know, something going on outside of work that has got you excited.
The season of life that I'm in is all things kids. So I've got a 7-year-old that just started playing softball and all school activities. And I've got an 11-year-old whose baseball team I coach.
Ooh.
And so, I don't have a lot of time for hobbies and thoughts outside of my kids and all the activities that they're in school. But if I did have time, I like to play golf. I think a lot about golf, and I've played golf since I was about 7 years old. So unfortunately for me, It's part of my DNA, and I don't think I could not think about it if you paid me to. So that's where I'm at. Haven't been reading as many books as I used to read. But one of the things I love is following military stuff online. Fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of that's happening right now. So I've been, talking to my old military buddies and just kind of talking about all things that are going on geopolitically.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there's a lot to consume there.
Yeah, there's maybe too much to consume there for sure. Not healthy. I don't advise anyone to go down that rabbit hole.
Yes. Well, thank you for your service. You're an Air Force veteran, I believe, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
But here is a great question for us to kind of get started. When you think, because culture means a lot to different people. When I say culture, it might mean different things to different people. What does it mean to you?
Yeah. So this is a problem, I think. I actually think that people throw around culture and they fail to define it. Okay. And anytime you fail to define a culture, my saying was always that if you don't design a purposeful culture, one will be assigned to you. Right? That's an old military saying, right? If you don't design a culture, one will be assigned to you. And I think a lot of folks fail at this because they don't design a culture and communicate specifically what they're aiming to achieve, that it becomes this ambiguous thing, right? And they grab a little bit out of their mission and a little bit out of their purpose and a little bit out of here and a little bit out of there. And they kind of just say, this is who we are. Well, if I tried to explain who Kurt is by just saying, this is who I am, every single person I encounter comes away with a different experience. And they label me a different way, right? Like one of the things I've often got in first encounters when I meet someone is that I'm overconfident, or people have said he's pretty cocky or whatever, and I learned this as I build a relationship with him. When I first met you, you were this way.
Yeah.
And I would always tell him, well, that's not who I am. I'm actually a really lighthearted guy. I like to have fun. I like to joke with people. And they get that, but they need longer term exposure to Kurt to figure it out. Right. So, I think cultures in general, people don't define them on the front end, right? And so, in my experience, one of the things I've done has been very clear about what the culture is, and the root of me, like I would, if you asked me, Kurt, what are your what are your core values, Kurt? I would say that I'm an optimistic person. I have humility, and I operate from a perspective of abundance. Those are the three most important values to me. And the reason I know those things are because when I encounter people that are negative, that think they know everything, and that operate out of scarcity, it like triggers me. I get annoyed. I just don't like it. Right. And so if you were to ask me, what are your three pillars, I would say, well, I'm optimistic, I have humility, and I operate out of abundance. So when you design a culture, right, and there's ways to do this that I can get into, but like you have to start out with three common things. You may have a list of 10, but people don't memorize lists of 10, and they're hard to adopt. So we narrow them down to three, right? Because even Kurt has more principles than those three, but the three that I really gravitate to are those three of optimism, humility, and abundance. In the practice setting, I took my group through an exercise, and I said, I want everybody to list 5 people at this organization right now today that you think embody everything we're about. And I left it at that. I said, if this person embodies who you think we are, even though you don't really know who we are and we haven't designed it, you're just going to pick these 5 people out. And they write 5 people down. And then the next part of the exercise is to say, okay, now you've got 5 people. With each person, I want you to write 3 words that you believe capture what make them who we are. And so now you've got 5 people and 3 values or principles or whatever the word is. It doesn't really matter. And you don't have to give them, any guidelines around that. So now you got 15 words, and you multiply those 15 words times the 10 people in the room. So now you've got 150 words. Okay. So you take those 150 words, you put them into a word cloud, and you find the overlaps. And what comes out of that is the shared meaning behind the, 150 words, or what did we have? We had 5 people, so 50 people, and there may be some overlap with the people. So you had 50 people, you had 150 words describing them, and then you find this overlap and this connection. And it's a way to quickly get to an agreement around the principles that you believe make us who we are. And it's super powerful because once you narrow it down in a word cloud, you may not love the words, but when you talk to the group and you figure out, what do these words actually mean at the root of this word? Is there a better word that means something better, but that we all agree still embodies this thing, right? And so at our practice, we decided that out of these 150 words, we got hard work, we got authentic care, and we got innovation. And this is what made up the core of who we were. hard work means that people aren't afraid to stay late, to think harder, to take the bad days, to take the long hours, the holidays, when you drive by, all these retail stores on Christmas, there's no cars in the parking lot, no employees are working. But when you drive by our clinic, we may have an emergency add-on. We may have somebody that needs to be seen post-op, right? And so in our world, we felt like that takes hard work and dedication, right? When you think about authentic care, care is physical. Authentic care takes a soul. You have to have a soul behind the care you're giving. It means that when Mrs. Smith comes in to see us, you didn't ask her questions last time for the sake of asking her questions. You asked her questions because you care about Mrs. Smith. And those are two different care models. And when you asked her questions and she told you answers, you remember it the next time because you were listening, and you listened because you care. You honestly care. And there's a soul behind that. There's something we can't really put our hands on to really get to that. And then innovation just meant that we valued thinking out of the box and we valued change. And those things were really important because if we tried something new, the culture wasn't, resistant to that innovation. They were open to it. We said, guys, this is in our DNA. Innovation and change and trying things and breaking things and fixing them and trying something else, even though it worked just fine. Like that's in our DNA. That's who we are. And so what's the application of this? Well, it's really nice because when you start to hire people, you tell them our values are hard work, authentic care, and innovation. Do you embrace change or resist it? Give me an example of a time when you embraced change. How do you react to things that change? And if you get the answers of, well, I really prefer a rigid environment that's predictable, that never changes. Okay, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that with us. You're a terrible fit for this place. You're going to hate it. You like to work hard. Not really. All right. Well, you're not going to like this place because we value people that really want to work hard and they feel good after they work hard. Right. And so a lot of people think that culture is supposed to mean happy, is supposed to mean, feel good. That's not necessarily what culture means. Culture is like DNA. This is who we are. It doesn't promise happiness. It promises alignment. And when you're aligned to a greater goal, that's when your purpose starts to feel good, right? So like when you're living your purpose, when you're aligned in your true purpose, that's when what you're doing aligns with who you are, right? Like you found your purpose in Retina to be this guy that brings value and talks about these important issues. That's when Mike's his best, right? So who you are aligns with what you do. And that's who we're trying to find when we hire people.
I love that because that was like a wonderfully concise point there about, the point is not to be happy. It's about to have alignment, right? And then everything good flows from that, right?
Totally.
A lot of good things happen. This show is sponsored by Seasoned Advice HR Services, where I help eye care businesses to make more money and save more money by hiring better, retaining better, and reducing your HR risk. If you would like an HR assessment or ongoing HR support, please reach out to me at seasoned-advice.com. Do you think that because you have gone through that exercise of really defining the values based on real people, and real behaviors, Do you think that that helped you overcome the challenge that a lot of clinics have of their values are just these boring words that everyone else has? Do you think it made it more real to the people in the clinic? And like,
of course, yeah, of course, absolutely. And there was such alignment around those things because we involved so many people in building them, right? So it's like you can't just say you're honest, right? Because ultimately your values have to actually be values. Like you don't just get to pick 3 good words that you think the consumer wants to hear or that help you, because ultimately they have to reflect who you are. Like if I said I'm optimistic and everyone around me is like, dude, you're the most negative nanny I've ever met, I'd be like, no, I'm not. I'm optimistic, right. But the reality is I can't turn my optimism off if you tried. Like it's just who I am. If somebody says there's a problem, I say there's a way to fix it and there's a better life ahead. That's just who I am. I can't help it. And your values have to be like that for your organization.
Do you think that would you agree with the statement that the moment of hiring is really your only chance to establish that values alignment, or can you kind of shape it? And how do you, is there some, it's 80% hiring and then 20% shaping? Like, how do you deal with that problem and that question?
Yeah, I think, the tough part about hiring is that anyone can say they're a hard worker to get the job.
Right.
Right. So you get really good at saying, give me an example of a time when you went above and beyond and it didn't matter to anyone but you that the work was done right. How do they answer that question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it a stump the dummy moment? And they're like, I don't have an example like that. Okay, well, if somebody thought that was important to them,
right,
that the work gets done better than excellent because it matters to them. Like nobody's watching, right?
Yeah.
But you did above and beyond because it mattered to you. That's a value. Yeah. I want that value here.
Yeah. And another thing I look for too is like, you've got the interview questions for sure. And then the way everything that happens as part of that selection process communicates a lot too, right?
Totally.
How do they create their resume? How do they communicate in their emails? How do they, when you ask for references, do they give it to you in a sloppy format, or is it like super structured? They've prepared their references.
Pull it out of them. Did they come prepared? Like, yeah. There's so much of that. The whole thing gives you feedback, and you're trying, and you should, like, nobody should discount that. Because I always tell people, like, if you interview someone, that's the absolute best behavior you will ever see in your life of that person.
Right.
Right. So if any little thing is off, it should be a red flag, because that thing is way bigger when you pull the tarp off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're exactly right.
I love that. Yeah. So I think I'm of the mind that, like, the interview is maybe half, and everything else around it is super important.
Yeah, is equal to that interview. Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And sometimes, you can't interview someone enough, right? And unfortunately, where we fall short in Retina is, we sometimes, when you're trying, especially as a business owner, like, you're trying to repair a turnover rate. And so you're behind, and you have to speed up because you need, and things start to fall apart. But I always say, like, and you're an HR expert, so you hire as slowly as you can, you fire as quickly as you can. Right. And sometimes that's hard because, when you're building a culture, the last thing you want to do is not give someone another chance. And you have to build that into your structure. You have to build like, if we have to part ways, how do we do that the right way? Like, how can you be compassionate and also terminate someone when they have, all this crazy stuff going, their family just broke up and they're on their own and they're in their lowest point in their life. And you're like, I hate to tell you this, but you're not a fit for us.
Yeah.
How we do that is, and you can't lose your core values in bad times either. So like authentic care and innovation and hard work also apply when someone's slacking off.
Yeah.
Like what kind of team are we now? When someone's got a broken ankle, but they still have to carry the log on the Navy SEAL team, right? Like how do we do that? Have they lost their core values just because, they're limping? Like, and I would tell my team this, like, is this you just don't like this person conversation? Like you guys aren't the right fit for each other in a supervisor role? Or is this like a core value issue with the person? Because I'll keep any core value winner. I'll move positions with them.
Yeah.
Like they can't be the point guard. They cannot be the coach.
Yeah.
But can they be on the team is what we're here to talk about. And if they move seats and lost rank and lost pay, would they still believe in our mission? Are they still a core value fit? And so we had a designed, do they get it? Are they a core value fit? Hard work, authentic care, innovation. Are all those boxes checked? They are. Okay, now let's go to get it, want it, capacity. Do they get it? I don't know if they get it. Okay, they don't get their job, but can they get a job here? Do they want it? Yeah, they want this. They want to work here. All right, well, that's good. Do they have, get it, want it, capacity? Capacity would be like the brains and the bandwidth. The brain, are they smart enough and do they have the time? So are they smart enough for the role they're in? I don't think so. Okay, well then we need to find a role for them that they get and that they are smart enough to do well. Because the person in the role wants to succeed. We all want to succeed. Maybe they're not in the season of their life where they've had the experience to succeed in this particular seat, right? But once you shift them into a new seat, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this person's great. Oh, they're so good. And it's like, yeah, that's what happens when you think through these problems. Like you don't just treat people like commodities and shave them off of your organization because you don't like what they're doing.
You kind of touched on this idea of like how you treat your team is going to send a message about whether you really believe in your values or not. Because like if you are mistreating your team or not being thoughtful or authentic in how you treat them, then how can you turn around and say, well, authentic care is really important to us?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the hardest part about core values is that you have to own them, and you have to own them no matter what the situation. And that's, you can, it's like, you have to own core values 10 out of 10 times. And if you own them 9 out of 10 times, you can lose the entire thing in that one time. And that's why people have such a struggle building a culture, because it's not like, hey, if we get this 80% of the time, we're winning. No. We have to get it 100% of the time. And if we miss one time, we've lost the entire thing. Right. And that's, going back to the beginning, it's like, that's why we don't pick shitty core values that aren't who we are. We don't promise riches. We don't promise perfection.
Right.
Yeah. That's why you don't do that in the first time.
Right. But you're not going to live up to it.
Compassionate care. Are we compassionate 100% of the time? Like, I don't know. If an injection takes less than a minute and we don't talk to the patient, like, is that really who we are? Is that compassionate care? They have questions and the doctor leaves the room, and the scribe answers the questions and the person says, I'm not really happy about that. I had questions for the doctor. Well, he has to move on. I don't know if our core values are compassionate care at that point. Right? So it's not that it's not that you can't live in that world. Like if the doctor needs to leave the room and the patients don't feel like there's compassionate care, then don't own the compassionate care. Like change your core values. It's not who you are.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Just
efficiency is great too.
Yeah, efficiency is great. That's exactly right. There's a better core value that you can really own out there, but don't try to like invent core values that sound good, like you're going to get extra patients, because from the patient's perspective, they didn't experience compassionate care. So now that's not congruent. So you're trying to be somebody you're not. And if Kurt was going to be somebody he's not, like it doesn't feel good, right? So that's how I look at that.
So this is making me now think of the physician, right? So, as a practice administrator, and we can come up with all of these ideas of what we think this practice should be or what it even really is. But sometimes you've got a physician who's not on board, or multiple ones, or you haven't involved them at all. So how do you get the physician aligned with that? And how do you deal with a physician who maybe is the outlier that isn't consistent with the intended culture?
Yeah, and this is very difficult, and it takes, you have to have strong leaders that are willing to call the physician out. Right? You have to have adoption in the first place and physicians in the room when these things are created. Like we didn't create hard work without physicians. We didn't create innovation without physicians. And when I think about those physicians, when we went through the exercise, a lot of those core values came from physicians. So you have to tell the story to the great, if there were physicians that weren't in the value creation exercise, they have to know how it was created. They have to know what it is happening around them to say like, hey, you're this way too, Dr. So-and-so. Like I see your hard work. I see your innovation. I see your authentic, sometimes clinical care. But what we want you to realize is that authentic care doesn't stop with your clinical care of the patient. It stops with how you treat your staff as well. And you're going to treat your staff with authentic care as well, because you should care about them, because without them, you don't get to treat any patients and care for those patients. So it's this beautiful cycle that when it's all together, it allows you to care for the patient clinically. Right? But again, you can't have core values that don't embody the physicians. Like if our core values were always happy, right? We'd have half the physicians that would not align with that, right? They'd be like, what is this? What is this utopia concept that you're trying to drill into everyone? It just doesn't work. So it's got to all be congruent, Mike, is the point. Like the worst mistake is creating values for your company that do not actually align with who you really are. And I think the other thing that is important to note is like businesses change. And at what point do you say these values don't work for us? It's not who we are. Let's go back and do the exercise. Right? Yeah. I gave you an exercise. Let's just go back and do it and see what happens. And maybe this is just a misalignment right now, but when we go back and do that exercise, like we come up with the same thing, or maybe something changed. It's okay to change your core values, right? Because the business is going to change. I doubt that your core values change, but it's important to do the exercise to find out.
Yeah.
And be open to doing the exercise. Not many people want to do that.
One thing that we talked about a little bit in preparing for this show has to do with growth, employee growth, and you talked about innovation, and I think that kind of ties in here. But, what is the role of staff growth, staff career development in a clinical culture, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, there's a important component of the organization that has to be intact for all this to work. Mm-hmm. I would always ask everyone. I did quarterly town halls and I would give book recommendations. And one of the things that I built trust around was this notion of psychological safety. And psychological safety came as a concept in the workplace, came from a great book called Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. I love Simon Sinek. Anytime he posts anything, I eat it up because I think he's just like exactly right. We live in a world that the workforce has been shaped by layoffs and by, just furloughs and, all this stuff. And I think what that's created in the minds of the workforce is psychological, danger or psychological insecurity. And so I think the pillar or the foundation of development starts with psychological safety. And what that means, so if you think about it, if someone's does not feel like they are safe in their job, they are unwilling to make mistakes, because to them, a mistake equals reprimand and possibly losing their income, their livelihood. And so you first build psychological safety. Hey guys, mistakes are fine. Like, we may correct mistakes. We may help you understand the mistake, but the mistake itself is human. Like, you're not going to accidentally hit the nuclear weapon detonation button here and blow up the whole company. Like, that doesn't exist. Okay. So you're allowed to make mistakes. And once you build psychological safety, like, mistakes do not equal termination or loss of your livelihood here. Mistakes are a result of trying things or not knowing things, right? So if you try something, well, what's inherently at the root of trying something? You're trying to do better or you're trying to do different. So we want to reward that because we're innovators, right? So you tried something and it didn't work out, but you tried it.
Yeah.
And this is what we're all about.
That's good. In that culture. Yeah.
So once you establish psychological safety and they've seen it demonstrated, they've seen where people have made mistakes and it's not a one strike type of environment, they're willing to try new things. And at the root of development is uncomfort, right? Because you're literally pushing someone beyond their comfort zone so that they improve or develop themselves. And I think inherently, like, development can't happen if the person's not open-minded enough to develop themselves. So if you develop yourself, that's you gaining skills and knowledge to improve yourself, right? And if you can improve yourself, you can improve at the workplace. So, you start with psychological safety, you offer development, but you quickly realize not everybody's ready to develop. And you have to be open to that. Like, everybody's in a season. If you would have asked me at 16 if I was, interested in developing, I would have said, like, no, I like cleaning golf clubs at the local country club. This is the best. This is cool. And I make money. And I might not have been open to your psychological development of my inner self. I wouldn't have known what that is. And I think you have to, like, really meet people where they are in terms of the season that they're in their life. What do you want to do? Like, what do you want to be in your life? Well, I want to be a doctor someday. Okay. Well, if you sit and snap photographs every day and do that for the next 5 years, that's not on the right track. Okay. So if that's what you want to do, we got to get you into research. And are you open to that? Oh, I'm not really open to that. Well, then I don't know if you're really open to being a doctor if you don't want to, like, develop outside of your comfort zone. So, I think ultimately, if you're starting in the right place with psychological safety, you find out really quickly who's open to development and where they are in the season or the season of their life and what they want to do. And I think once the development piece in and of itself is like, that's easy. It's finding the right people that are open to development and that like are comfortable in the uncomfortable, right? Leadership.
Yeah.
Of leaders, leadership roles with people who have never led, right? You're like, the traditional model is like, you're such a great tech. We should make you lead all the techs. Bad idea. Bad idea. Not every great tech equals a great leader.
Yeah.
And not every great leader knows how to be a good tech. So those are two totally different jobs. So you can't fall into the trap of so-and-so knows everything. They've been here 10 years and clinically they're the best. Yeah, but you're giving them 10 people to manage and they have no idea how to do that. Like, that's a really bad idea.
I'm wondering, so before we go on, we're coming up at the 1:00. Do you have, because I have another question that I think is going to be a hard-hitting question. Do you have, I think we can maybe wrap up in 10 minutes, but do you have a hard stop?
No, I'm good. I can keep
Okay. Let me ask my hard-hitting question here.
Uh-oh.
Pun intended, possibly. So you coach baseball. So when you think about culture, what analogies or similarities do you see between coaching a youth baseball team and leading an ophthalmology, clinical business that you think would stand you in good stead regardless of the setting you were in?
I think about building trust, right? So like in either example, I have to build trust with the people who are looking at me. And how do I do that? Whether it's 11-year-olds on a baseball field or, professional leaders that I'm leading, they have to trust me, and so if they trust me, then I know that my communication improves, like my communication effectiveness improves, meaning that when I talk to them, they're listening because they care and they trust that what I'm saying might be important, right? So like first day of baseball practice, they need to know that I'm a safe place. I'm fun. I'm not going to yell at them. I'm not going to judge them. I'm going to encourage them. I'm going to make them feel like, hey, this guy, he notices me. He sees me, right? And so I think either way, when you're coming into a new organization, you have to build trust and let people know that you see them and that you're watching them and that you appreciate them and you're encouraging to them, right? And I always said, leadership is as simple as being a good parent, because not all parents are good. But leadership's just like having kids, right? Well, how do you want your kid to turn out? Do you want to traumatize them? No, most parents don't want to traumatize their kid. Okay, well then stop yelling at them all the time. Stop making their amygdala fire up with anxiety every time you're around. Right. And so how do you do that? Well, you go out into the field, like in a practice setting. I go out to the field. I tell people, hi, how are you? What's going on? Love seeing you out here. Like I loved going out into the practice and seeing people and seeing how the sausage was made and talking to people and building friendships, at every level. Like I think too often leaders sit in their office and don't roll up their sleeves and get out into the field and let people know that you don't know the answers. Inevitably, when I would go into the field, like people would come up and say, hey, how do we do this? And I'm like, honestly, guys, I have no idea what you're talking about. I do not know, but I know we have people here that are like PhDs in that subject. And so have you thought about talking to so-and-so at this clinic? and seeing how they do it. You should do that, and I think that builds, again, like, this is a humility thing. It's like who I am, but you can't be the person who knows everything. And it's a dangerous place to go, because if you pretend you know everything, you get every question. And if you get every question and people are looking at you to solve every problem, then you're kind of sunk, because you can't possibly, or physically or mentally, live in that world where people bring you all the problems and bring you all the questions. You have to empower people to find solutions and work together. It's the same thing on a baseball team, right? Like, I want to hear you guys talk to each other. I want to hear you tell each other how many outs there are. Like, this is your team, right? I'm here to manage the administrative portion, but you guys have to run the team, right? You have to encourage each other. It can't just be me. There's 11 of you. There's one of me. Yeah. When your team gets excited about something you do, talk to each other and tell them that. Like, I can't be the only one.
I love that. I love that analogy. I think there's a lot of brilliance there, parenting, coaching. People laugh and they say, well, managing is like dealing with kids. And it is. It's not really funny. It's like, that's because that's human nature,
It's human nature.
So many great lessons there. So
but it's more the point of, I like to say, like, managing is like having kids, but the root of having kids is love.
Yeah.
That's what starts everything. You love your children. So does your staff feel like you love them? You may love them in a different way, but like, they have to feel the root of your love, so that they know that what you're asking them to do is good for them. Right? We ask our kids to fold laundry. I ask my son to fold his laundry, not because I need the laundry done. I tell him, I want you to be a marryable man someday. Right? If you want to be a marryable man, you have to fold your laundry and keep it neat in your room. You can't be a slob. That's not marryable.
I'm going to have to use that one with my 10-year-old son.
Oh, yeah. You got to. That's a good one.
Yeah. So you're trying to say, hey, I love you. This is my intent. We have a good, we're on common ground here. I want you to be better. You want to be better. And that's why we're doing all these things. We're these ground ball drills, or these, that's why I'm asking you to be on time for work and all that good stuff,
Yeah. I think there's inherently like a negative connotation. And I hear the same thing. Leaders say that, like, it's like having children.
Yeah.
And it's the negative part of having children, but the positive, again, optimist part of having children starts with love.
Yeah.
And that's why you have children at work, and if you thought about it like that, like, what is it I want from my team at work? I want them to know that I love them and I care about them. Oh, well, how does that look? What's their love language?
Yeah.
And that's important, right? We do those exercises to find out, like, how does my team like to be communicated to? Like, what is their love language? Is it acts of service? How can I do acts of service? How can I do quality time? We'll stay away from the physical touch, because that might be a little weird, but I can certainly dab up my guy at work.
Yeah.
If they
high five, man.
Yeah, totally. Like, dab them up and let them know you love them.
Yeah. Well, Kurt, we've talked through a lot of topics here. I think there's so many awesome gems here in this conversation. I would love for you to be able to share with people listening a little bit about what you do in your business now.
Sure.
And how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I began a journey with Allied GPO in building their retina GPO business. So we traditionally understand GPOs as the middleman between distribution and the practice. We're building something extremely unique here at Allied Retina that I would call more of a technology company. And we're going into areas of retina that your traditional GPOs have not served. And we're really trying to help practices be better. We're adding value via technology that I think is certainly not in the market and will continue to grow. We've grown by leaps and bounds just in the time that I've been here. More practices are waking up around how the big distributors own their own retina groups and we don't. And we find that that's a non-conflict and that they appreciate that and that they know our strategies and our technology is truly there to serve their needs and to make them a more profitable practice. And if they're profitable, they can grow, they can see more patients, they can fight more blindness. And that's why we're here.
Awesome. Well, how can people find you or connect with you?
Yeah, sure. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. Shoot me a message. Love to talk to whoever will listen. And I mean, one of the things that I love most about my job is I'm back in these retina clinics. I'm talking to doctors and I've got, a lot of experience in the space and I like to help them all across the board. I mean, one of the things I love talking about is anything from operations to staffing to culture to, technology to, payer contracts, all the things, right? So it's certainly been a lot of fun for me to still be out there and talking to retina physicians about, how to make their practice a better practice.
Awesome. Well, I'll put your LinkedIn link in the show notes when this goes out. I really appreciate the conversation and super glad we're connected.
Absolutely, Mike. It's been a pleasure, man.
Well, that brings this episode of Eye Care Leadership Live to a conclusion. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on your podcast app and share it with someone who would value the content. I promise to bring you more guests and content to help make you a better eye care clinical leader. I also invite you to subscribe to my HR newsletter for eye care leaders. You can find information about that at seasoned-advice.com. Now go out there and lead with confidence.